Everybody loves Avalugg!
Do they? Do they really, though?
I guess it is the bad and the ugly, so everyone else looks good. Avalugg is one of those Pokemon that, like, just kinda exist? For some reason or another? Hisuian Avalugg is new, so that's nice. But Avalugg was originally introduced in Generation 6, so Kalos, so France. It's possibly a reference to... wine? Baguettes? Alright, well, the land is older than France, so let's look at pre-French history then. How did the most recent Ice Age affect Beta France? Not much. France does have a few gorges formed by glaciers, like the Verdun Gorge, which was formed during the beginning of the Pleistocene period, what many refer to as the Ice Age, so from 2.5 million to 10,000 years ago. But taking a look at Europe through most of that period, the bulk of the Ice Age was much, much more northern. But look! What would eventually become France and England were still conjoined by land. They were buddies before nations existed. But thankfully, despite all of this ice being much more Norse, Kalos actually has plenty of Northern European stuff in it too. It's not all frilly lame snail-sniffing compensation, baguette. The legendaries are based on Norse mythology after all. And there's Aurorus, and Avalugg. So, as the Ice Age ends, glaciers break. Huge chunks of ice fall into the ocean and become icebergs, which then float out to sea far, far away. And that right there, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's a Bergmite! Look at this cutie! It's small compared to Avalugg, hence it being a little mite. And since they sometimes live in ice caves, they are all among the stalagmites. Both definitions of mite, and that's why it's so tiny and pointed. Plus, if it wasn't obvious, it is just a reference to the saying, that's just the tip of the iceberg, which is referring to something that is very clearly apparent, but under the surface runs much, much deeper. There's a lot more obscureness lurking under the surface. And that's Avalugg. Avalugg is an iceberg, the underside specifically, hence it being so big. I mean, have you seen most icebergs? Many icebergs really are flat on the top. It's why penguins and seals like to sit on them, and why Bergmite likes to sit on top of Avalugg riding it around. One Dex entry reads, "It doesn't seem to mind if other Pokemon hitch a ride on top of it to cross the water." It's like a crocodile in a way. A flat who hides its true size under the surface. And also doesn't mind giving rides to certain other animals. It's even got that diamond shape. Them carrying other Pokemon around is where it gets the lug part of its name from. It lugs them around and lugs heavy objects. And here's just a perfect etymology fact. The word lug is Scandinavian in origin. How cool is that? It's ice cold cool, that's how cool it is. As a Scandinavian noun, lug refers to an ear, or rather, the part of a hat that flaps over the ear, not unlike these ice crystals on Avalugg. Or those ice crystals and mandibles on Hisuian Avalugg. Don't worry, we'll get to that. The Ava then is just from avalanche, which is a large cascade of ice, snow, and rock, as well as whatever they pick up along the way. Like a ski lodge. In a way then, when an iceberg breaks off of a glacier, is that not a mini avalanche? Back to crocodiles though. Some ancient ancestors of theirs that once lived in what today is Europe are the Adasauruses and the Stagnolepis. Stagnolepis? Stagnolepis. Stag? Oh no! Lepis! Both of which are Adasaurs. They were similarly flat-backed and low to the ground, and looking at Hisuian Avalugg next to a person, they were about the same size too. Though that is easy to say when the smallest Adasaurs were only a meter and the largest were 3, and the Avaluggs are 1.4 and 2 typically. Other than all that and their very triangular heads, another one of the better connections that they have has to do with their back plates. Avalugg has these horizontal cracks along its back ice armor, which allows it to bend despite the armor. Similarly, Aedosaurs had horizontal rectangular rows of large interlocking bony plates that overlapped a bit with a small opening that allowed them to still move despite being completely covered in backplating, which made them flat on the top. Both these beasts are defensive and spiky along the edges too. So you combine all of that, and you get Bergmite and Avalugg. But then, out of seemingly nowhere, a message from today's sponsor, Keeps. That's right, I bet Avalugg wishes he had used Keeps. Imagine an Avalugg with a big ol' forest of hair on its head instead of that shiny spot, smooth as ice. 2 out of 3 men will experience hair loss in their lifetimes, and that's where Keeps comes into play. With their well-researched and actual science-backed treatments, they help you keep your hair. It's in the name even. You don't even Avalugg yourself anywhere, it's delivered straight to ya. With subscriptions and reminders, they keep you on task and help you form routines. Trust me, hair care routines are hard to keep up with, and I do not envy anyone having to start them up for the first time. Need all the help you can get. So the more help, the better, right? And if you have any questions, Keeps keeps doctors around 24/7, always there to help you figure out the correct treatment for you and your needs. And that's right, all of Keeps treatment plans are doctor recommended. Plus, it's not out of reach for anyone, typically coming in at about half of the cost of a traditional pharmacy. And because of this sponsorship, they are offering you, my sweet viewers, a sweet deal. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/Lockstin or click the link in the description. That's KEEPS.com/Lockstin. Hair loss stops with Keeps. But then, out of seemingly nowhere, Pokemon Legends Arceus gave us Hisuian Avalugg. What is this European ice-aged dinosaur croc with a Scandinavian hat doing in Hisui? Which is Sinnoh, which is Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost island. Well, it's pretty cool, honestly. Once again, cool because it's ice. And now it's rockin' out. Hisuian Avalugg adds the rock type to its previous mono ice, which could be simple. Sure, avalanches take rocks with them, or maybe it's more directly a glacier now, carving canyons into the earth, ripping up the edges of mountains and carrying their rocks along with it. That explanation is satisfactory enough for why it's rock type, sure, but I have so many other questions. Why is it smaller than regular Avalugg? Why is it more narrow and less diamond-shaped? Why is it here in a historic Japanese region? And why does it have these weird, tusk mandibles? Is it just a Nunatic? Or Nunatak? Oh, don't you worry. I didn't know what it was either. So you have a glacier, or a big ice sheet, and then a big rocky mountain sticking right up out of it. Sometimes it's a plateau. That's a Nunatic. Do you see the resemblance? Big vertical rocky body, but a snowy or icy top? Heck yeah! They also tend to be kind of pointy and sharp-edged because of the glaciers and ice scraping at their sides all the time, wearing them down over the millions of years. But now, let's get back to answering those other questions. Let us first look at glaciers in Hokkaido. There are none. Alright, but how about during the last ice age? Hokkaido did have its share of glaciers. The canyons and rough edges in the Hidaka Mountains were formed by them. Though, according to developments of quaternary sciences, quote, mountain glaciers in Japan were less extensive during the last glacial maximum. This is out of phase with the continental ice sheets in the northern hemisphere. In other words, during the last ice age, Hokkaido had glaciers, but they were abnormally small compared to the rest of the northern hemisphere. Perhaps pointing to Hisuian Avalugg being so much smaller. And narrower too. I mean, think about it. Glaciers compared to icebergs tend to be much longer than they are wide, just by their very nature being part of the formation of canyons and rivers after all. However, that might also have to do with boats, specifically the very flat-topped aircraft carrier. I've said this before in our Every Ice-type Pokemon Explained video when talking about regular Avalugg, and if being similar to an aircraft carrier wasn't intended back then, perhaps it is now. Particularly the aircraft carriers made in Project Habakkuk by the Allies in World War II. I mean, look, they're even the same shape. In short, due to materials like steel being harder to get and becoming more and more valuable due to the war effort, the Allies wanted to find a more efficient means of transporting their war planes by sea. Aircraft carriers use a load of stuff to make, and when they sunk, all that stuff's just lost. So the goal of Project Habakkuk was to build one out of a combination of ice and wood pulp in a ratio of 6:1, a combination called pykrete. I mean, think about it. Icebergs float and are flat, and they just sit there. They're free. You can just take them. The police can't stop you. You can put planes on them the same way Bergmites sit on Avalugg. And consider Hisuian Avalugg's Pokedex entry. The armor of ice covering its lower jaw puts steel to shame and can shatter rocks with ease. Yeah, pykrete also puts steel to shame. It's not quite as strong, but it's healable and takes only 1% of the energy needed to produce the same mass of steel. That is so much more efficient. But ultimately, while prototypes were made, these ships never saw active use.
It's because they would just melt, isn't it?
Well, yes, but actually no. Ironically, it was because they were too expensive and used too much material, just of a different kind, cork instead of steel. But also, when large enough, ice takes forever to melt. Take an ice cube. It melts after so long. Now take 2 ice cubes. They help keep each other cold, so the melting takes longer. Now take 1 billion ice cubes and insulate them from the outside warmth with cork. An oversimplification? Absolutely. But still, that's why after it snows, even after most of the snow melts away, after a few days or so, the mound of snow that piles up from the snowplow, plowing the snow, that could last weeks. But speaking of snowplows, is that the deal with Hisuian Avalugg's flip-flaps? It looks like it. Especially the plows in front of trains that gotta go through the snow and shoot it out all over the place. Pokedex! This Pokemon barrels along steep mountain paths, cleaving through the deep snow. Conveniently, wedge plow trains are often used throughout Hokkaido. I mean, they've got trains that go through where there's snow half of the year. Take a look at the Kiya 291. That plow also opens up. I wonder. Consider how Hisuian Avalugg opens its jaw covers and then starts shooting giant hunks of ice at you out of its top. Not unlike how these trains can open up to reveal a snow sucker, or snow blower as some like to call them. That's a lot of blow. Oh, look at that. The JNR DD14 loves snow. A lot of these plows are also just put in front of the trains as needed, rather than being built into the front car, which makes it look a bit separated and a bit triangular. Sort of like Avalugg's head, no? How it's like there's a neck, so it's not the same as its body? And the biggest connection this all has to Hokkaido is not only that it snows a lot there, so they need to frequently use snowplows on their railways and roads, but also Hokkaido has a lot of snow, and they depend on snowplows to live. Have you seen Frappe Snowland in Mario Kart 64? You'd think this area is just silly Mario magic, cartoony fun, but it's actually not even as crazy as reality. This is the reality in Hokkaido. Every year, 15 meters of snow! Scenes like this are so uniquely Hokkaido and so intrinsic to their way of life there that of course it had to be referenced somehow. And here it is. An Avalugg. And heck, if you think about it, what is a glacier doing if not plowing through mountains? They even bring nutrients from up in the mountains down to the valleys. Glaciers are great for plants. Is it a coincidence then that Yama no Kami, a Shinto kami, is the goddess of mountains and agriculture? Especially since you use plows in farming too? So, I'd say that about sums it up. It's a Nunatak glacier with some Japanese snowplow or snowplow train elements sprinkled in. Maybe original Avalugg was just an iceberg Atosaur monster, and Game Freak saw the connection people were making to Project Habakkuk and then said, no. But that's a pretty good idea, let's write it down. And so they made it a regional variant. Or maybe, just maybe, that particular connection is just a coincidence. After all, Avalugg is not as obviously aircraft carrier as, say, the Dragapult line. And also, Project Habakkuk was pretty, the opposite of Japanese. You know? Well, thanks for watching, and never stop freezing your noggin off. Stay warm. Ooh.